Hello everyone, and welcome again to another InduSoft webinar. Today we're going to be talking about this great new feature that we implemented on the Service Pack 2 for the version 7.1, which is the capability of debugging your VBScript. So we added a VBScript debugger. As you can see on this screenshot, is a new tab in our ribbon that is used to debug your code written in our VBScript. So let me go through the agenda real quick here. My name is Andre Bastos. I'm the VP of Quality Assurance here at Indosoft, being the company since 1999. I'm going to go through a quick company overview, and then we're going to see a little bit of the VBScript itself on InduSoft Web Studio, some of our debugging tools, and then we're going to go through debugging features specifically for VBScript that we added now on Service Pack 2. During that time, we're going to do a live demo of how that feature works, and we're going to go to the Q&A session, so questions and answers. So if during this presentation you have any questions, I will not respond right away when you send me the questions through our chat or our Q&A panels. But I'm going to read all the questions at the end during the Q&A. So you can send your questions. When I'm done with the live demo, I'm going to read your questions, and I'm going to answer either to everybody or I'm going to respond it privately depending on the question that we receive. Okay? So, first of all, thank you all for joining me here on this webinar. So, a brief company overview. InduSoft was established in 1997 here in the United States. Our headquarters are in the city of Austin, Texas, and we have offices also in Germany and in Brazil, 2 offices in Brazil. We've been from the very beginning, and since September 2013, we are part of the Invensys family of products. So, InduSoft Web Studio prides itself to be pioneer in the industry, for instance, on creating the very first HMI package, complete HMI package for embedded systems by Microsoft or Windows CE. And that came back on 1997 when it was a version 1.0, when you didn't have HMIs back then with Windows CE on them. And before that, we saw the opportunity, and we developed a software that would run on that operating system, a small footprint, only 2 megabytes large. So when the hardware manufacturers realized the benefits of Windows CE and started developing hardware running Windows CE, when they started looking for a software to run on their hardware, we were ready to run on their hardware. So that's pretty much how we came into the market. And because our products, the InduSoft Web Studio, all those features that we developed also for the web deployment, which means you could run your project on a Windows CE device and remotely open a browser and see your project. We are the very first one to have a complete solution for that type of deployment. We hold a patent on database connectivity, which includes saving and retrieving data that you are collecting on your Windows CE device, and of course, if you're running on Windows PC, that's the same thing as well, but the biggest challenge is to have something that will do that on Windows CE. And recently, with the Service Pack 2 for our version 7.1, we even support multi-touch. So if you have a hardware that supports dual touch or multi-touch, InduSoft Web Studio can do that even on Windows CE. There are a couple of devices out there with Windows CE and multi-touch on it. We already run on those with, dual touch, zoom, and pinch and zoom, rotate, and all this kind of gestures that you have now with multi-touch. You can see on this page also some of our certifications. We are OPC Foundation members since 1998. We are ISO 9001 company, and our OPC client UA has been recently certified by the OPC Foundation Laboratory. We also hold the certified solutions for Motorola and AT&T. And on this slide here, you can see some of the awards that we've been getting throughout the years. We were probably doing something right because As you can see, in 2013, we won 3 Engineers' Choice Awards, which means that was voted by the readers of Control Engineering. We've been getting them, and we are running also again in 2014. So if you want to vote on us, we would really appreciate that. And you can see down here also some of the latest Frost and Sullivan awards that we've been getting throughout the years. So this said, let's go ahead and take a look on what InduSoft offers on the VBScript scope on InduSoft Web Studio. We added VBScript back in 2005 on our version 6.1, and it was extremely successful. And why did we pick Visual Basic? It's a very well-known programming language out there. It's high level. A lot of people already use that on macros for Microsoft Office. So a lot of people that know Excel, they write macro using VBA. So VBScript is a subset of VBA that was developed to run on browsers. It was Microsoft's response to JavaScript. So that was another factor we picked when we were choosing which language we would implement, which commercial language we would implement in the product. We took a look at that. VBScript would run on Internet Explorer and also would run on Windows CE. So that was the deal breaker. That's when we say, okay, that's the language that we want to implement in our product. So it's very simple to configure, and it's widely used out there. If you don't know how to do something on Visual Basic, you can Google for it, and you're going to find someone that already did it, so or something similar to it, so you can reuse that on your SCADA project. And there is the integration with the InduSoft Web Studio, built-in functions and tags as well. So you can use our functions that we already had created on the Visual Basic environment. Just put a $sign, and you can use those functions. What are the interfaces that support that? We have the task that runs inside our background task called script. So you can write a script and you're going to execute it when the execution field for that worksheet is true. We have global procedures where you can create your own functions and subroutines. We have also the startup script. You know, a script is executed only once when you first start your runtime. A screen script that for each screen you can run on the background of the screen when the screen is open, while it's open, or when you close the screen. Graphics script that's going to be running whenever the graphics module is running. So this last two is interesting that they can run even on a WebThing client running remotely. So if you want to do a script that's going to run on WebThing clients as well, locally on that WebThing client, you can use the graphics script to do that. They're going to be independent from the server project. When you have an object on the screen, like a button, that you have the command property or the command animation, you can write your script to set a tag, reset a tag, and one of the options is to write a VBScript. And when you have an ActiveX or a .NET control, and you have a method, and you have an event, and that event is going to trigger an action, you can write the script that will be executing that action also in VBScript. Okay, and again, it supports our built-in functions and all the tags. So one of the cool things about having VBScript on the product is that it can save you tags, because now you can create variables, and using variables you can do a lot of temporary calculations and type of thing, and the life cycle of the variable is very interesting as well, because let's say that you create a variable on the startup script. All the other scripts from the task, they can use that variable as well. And let's say that you create a variable on the GraphScript interface. All the screens can use that variable as well. So this can save you a lot of tags. Of course, I want you to use the more tags you can, because more tags, bigger the license. But to make a project cleaner and easier to be maintained, you can use a lot of variables on VBScript as well. It has IntelliSense, which is the autocomplete feature. As you start typing, we already prompt you the parameters that you can do. So, and you can even autocomplete when you're using variable names, when you're using tag names and things like that. You can autocomplete for you. So this can save a lot of engineering time as well. And with VBScript, you can create your own functions, your own subroutines. Before having VBScript, we used to have a toolkit that we call the math extensibility, where you would write your own functions inside InduSoft Web Studio. Since when we got VBScript, we never needed to sell that toolkit anymore because you can create your own routines. And keep in mind that since version 7.1, you can protect all your scripts with specific passwords, and they are all encrypted. So if you write one specific procedure file, you can save that, and then you can assign a password to it. Your IP will be protected. And even if you try to find that file on the project folder and try to open it, that file is encrypted. It's not that easy to break. Okay? And again, it's easy for you to find a lot of examples on the internet. You can see here the www.w3schools.com/VBScript. They have a lot of exercises, a lot of examples on how to use VBScript. So this is, a very good tool to have on the product. So before getting into the debugging tools specific for the VBScript, we can see how we can take advantage of the debugging tools that we already have on InduSoft Web Studio. If you're familiar with the product, you probably have seen already our database spy. That's pretty good because you can check the values of tags without needing to put a display together, to put an object on the screen just to check the value of a tag when you're doing a calculation, stuff like that. So you can put that tag on the database spy. But the database spy doesn't do only that. It can also execute functions. So you can see when you're writing a script if a certain function is going to behave the way you want to, so you can put that on the database spy. Here on this screenshot here, I'm showing an example of the function called getClock. So that returns the number of seconds from the current time, and also the function format, where I'm converting a number that's on decimal format into hexadecimal. So you can see how those functions work on database spy. And now on database spy, that's one of the things that we enhanced in order to support the VBScript debugging features. So we have now other 3 tabs on it. In the past, we used to have only DB1, 2, DB3, and 4. Now we have the tab Locals, where we show the values of the local variables, not tags, but VBScript variables. We have a stack frame that shows the name of the function that we are debugging and which module called that function that we are debugging. Okay? And we have the tasks frame that shows the status of the InduSoft Web Studio tasks. So if you have multiple screens open, we're going to tell you during that break what's happening to those screens. Are they stopped? Are they still executing? That we see on the tasks frame. And a cool thing about both the database spy and what I'm going to talk about now, the output window or log win, is that you can debug the project that is running locally on your machine, or you can connect through Ethernet to a remote runtime, which can be protected by user and password, and you can debug what's happening remotely there. The output window was so far the best friend of the debugging of any application because you could use the trace function. So the trace will send messages to the output window. So with the trace, you could, for instance, put that function inside a loop or inside a script, and that's going to spit out the values of those variables or the status of a function, which you couldn't do another way before. Before we had the debugging for VBScript, the trace was the only thing you could do. All right. So again, you can do that both for your local projects and your remote applications. Now let's take a look on the specific new features that we brought into the play for debugging VBScript on InduSoft Web Studio. So first, what can be debugged? Of course, it has to be one of the Visual Basic interfaces. So we can debug global procedures. We can debug GraphScript. So if you write GraphScript while the graph is running or on open, something like that, that can be debugged as well. We can debug the scripts that were written using our script task and screen script. I put, again, screen script and graphic script, but screen script as well. So when a specific screen is open, and I will do the unopen or while open or one of the touch events, that can be debugged as well. What are some of the limitations that we have? First, if you have the command animation or the command property on the screen and you're writing a VBScript there, you cannot debug that specific script. Is there a workaround? Yes. You could create a global procedure, and from that button, you would call that global procedure. Then you can debug there. Okay? And when you have ActiveX and .NET controls triggering methods by their events, and you can write scripts in there directly on the object, those still cannot be debugged in this version. Okay, so these are the two limitations, and some other ones as we're gonna see. So with the Source Pack 2, we've got now a new tab, the debug tab, that it shows only when you have a script that can be debugged. So let's say that you open the global procedures, you're going to see that debug tab. Let's say that you are developing a screen. On the screen, no, you won't see the debug tab because you cannot debug in there. Okay, so some of the features that you have there. Debug options, you can choose to debug the visualization module only, what we call the debug viewer, or what we call the core process, which is the background tasks. So this allows you to separate what exactly you want to work on. Let's say that you already have your screens all figured out. You want to do some scripting for reporting or something like that. So this can save you some processing issues if you choose to debug only the background tasks. Okay, so we're going to see some of these options as we start our live demo here. And then on the local management, you have something similar to what you have when you're on the home tab of the ribbon. So you can run, stop, but now you have also one more button, which is the debug button. So keep in mind this, if the project is running already, you cannot debug it. Okay, if you want to debug, you would stop the runtime, put your breaking points, we're going to talk about them, and then you start it in debug mode. Once you have debugged, you're going to have to stop again and then call the runtime again. Okay, so if you have assigned breakpoints to your scripting, when you call the runtime only, those are not affected. Like the runtime is not affected at all by breakpoints. Only if you're running in debug mode. All right. So we have then the group, the debug tools group here, where you can assign the breakpoints to your script. It's very easy. You can click on the row that you want to insert a breakpoint, and then you have the control. So whenever you're running debug mode and you stop on a breakpoint, you can step into, which is going to go one step at a time. You're going to see the three options: step into, over, and stepping out as well. Okay, we're going to see this in just a few minutes. So right now, let's see what we can do with the breakpoints. So the breakpoints, they are used to identify important sections on the script that you want to focus while you are developing your project. So here I have a screenshot of the main procedures from our PC demo, where I have a script that is called by a button on the screen. So I have a recipe screen with a button that I click on that button. I'm going to call this function called create file list, and I want to debug. For whatever reason, it's not doing what I expect to do. So I assign a breakpoint here. And to do the breakpoint, as you're going to see, you just go and click on this area. We're going to assign a breakpoint in there. So when I run in debug mode, as I run, it's going to come and it's going to suspend the execution of all the scripts on this specific point here. As you step into that script, you're going to see then the variable values and what's happening on each one of these lines. Okay? So once you assign breaking points, you have three options on stepping through your script. Step into, that's going to advance only one step at a time. So on this example here, the step into, I had a break here on the row number 69. If I step into, I'm going to go to the row 70, execute it, 71, execute it, and you're going to notice that between the row 71 and 75, actually 76, I'm running a loop. So as I'm stepping into this loop, I'm going to do this, and I do the step into, I'm going to be each one of these rows and doing the loop all the time. Okay? So if I step over it, I'm going to come here and from the loop, I'm going to step over the loop. Okay? So I will not get into it. Or a better example would be this. What if here I had a call for another function, another subroutine from my global procedures? Step over means I will execute that, but I will not debug row by row from that specific function call. Okay? And step out is if I am inside, let's say, a function that was called by a main procedure, I'm going to step out, I'm going to finish executing it and go back to the first, or what I may call the main script. Okay, so these are the three options. Step into is going to go step by step. Step over is going to skip the function calls. And step out, if I am inside a function call, I'm going to finish executing and go back to the first script. Okay? So, in addition to the breaking points, we have now, on the database SPY, what I mentioned at the beginning, the new three tabs. So locals is going to show the value of your local variables, as you can see here. All right? And stack frame is going to show which function has been called and who called that function. You see on this screenshot here, it was an on-down action from the object ID number 1, a button on the screen called recipes, that called a function called create file list inside the global procedures. So you can know who is calling what and why you have those variables here on the database SPY. All right? And the last new tab that we have is the tasks frame that shows the state of the tasks that are being executed. So the VR module, which is the visualization, is stopped running here when I took this screenshot. Why? Because I suspended the execution on a specific breakpoint. All right? So we're going to do a live demo here now. We're going to debug our PC demo and understand a little bit how those debugging functions work. So here I am on my InduSoft Web Studio environment where I have a few scripts. So I'm going to do something really simple. I have here a VBScript that I wrote. I'm going to even eliminate here my array for now. And do something very simple like this. And I'm going to debug this specific script here. So I created two variables. That's one of the beauties of VBScript. I don't have to declare which type my variable is. I just say I have variables. And I'm going to execute this. So I'm going to debug this guy. I'm going to do a breakpoint here. So the way this script is written, when I'm executing the background tasks, when run script, the tag goes to 1, I'm going to execute it. And at the end, I'm going to reset it. So it's just like a one-shot type of thing. All right, so I insert this guy. Now I'm going to debug. I'm going to debug only the background task because that's where the script is. All right, so I click debug here. It starts my whole project. So I'm going to go back here on the database SPY, and I'm going to force the value of this tag here, run script. I'm going to force it to 1. And boom. Sure enough, we come and we suspend the execution of everything here. So I have my variable as I roll, I'm sorry, if I roll my mouse over the variable name, I have which value the variable has. So right now, X I have 0, and Y I have 10. But then I'm going to step into. So now I assign 0 to y. I'm waiting for x, so I can look on my locals here. I have 0 and 0. As I step into, now, because both x and y are 0, so I still have 0. So I'm going to execute that again. So step into, I execute the loop again. So now y has the value 1. And I expect the x is going to have the value 2. There we go. So I'm going to execute again. So I can go one by one. Or I can step out. So I get out of the loop and I finish executing it. And I go to the next thing to be debugged, which is the script 1 that is being executed constantly. If I hit continue, you're going to keep executing. So you can see, for instance, this tag here called tag counter. I'm executing it. I'm counting it. So if I put a tag here, it is counting. Or if I click on the break, boom, I'm going to stop the execution, and I can go back and keep executing one at a time. So if I force my run script here back to 1, when I'm done executing this script here, so I do, for instance, step out, it's going to go to the next script, which is the script 1, and it's going to go again one by one. So I can here see my local variables again. So I'm going to step over, step out, I'm out of the loop, and now I have those other variables that are from my other script here that I'm debugging, the script task. Okay, I'm done debugging. I know what I have. My counter is 50 here, so I'm going to step over, execute again, and I'm going to step out, and I'm done. Continuing. So the counter is going to be counting again, you can see, and I'm going to stop my debugging here. So you guys were able to see here how we can stop the or suspend execution on one specific point, right? So what if I go here on my procedures and I create a quick function here on the main procedures? I'm going to call this just a very simple function that I'm going to call counter test. I'm going to create a variable here, and I'm going to make this counter here counts for I equals 0 to 10. So a very simple script here inside this function call, or this subroutine called counter test. Okay, so I'm doing this because on this script here that we developed, I'm going to insert here a call for counter test, so we can see the step out happening as well. Okay. So now I'm going to run in debug mode again. Run in debug mode. And I'm going to set my script here to 1. So let's say that I'm here. So when it gets to the point to debug, it automatically opens whatever file has that breakpoint. So again, right now x is 0, y is 10. And then I'm going to execute this loop here. Step into, I can see y1, so I can see it being executed. You see the yellow arrow pointing where things are happening. So I'm going to step out. So I can go to the call for the counter test. So now I'm going to call the counter test. So if I step into it, it's going to go to the local procedures. It opens automatically, and now it's going to execute the local counter. So I'm going to execute now, step into. So I see my local counter incrementing. Well, I already see that it works. I can step out from there and go back to my script here. And right now, my variable run script has the value 1. As I step into it, it executes, goes to 0. So I'm done executing this guy here. Okay? So basically what happened when I had this call here, and I stepped into it, it went to here, it started executing. While I was executing this, I did a step out. So before I was done seeing everything, it finished executing and got out of this loop here. So I'm going to debug again. Here, I have the value 0 again. I'm going to run debug. And I'm going to call VBScript. So here I am again. And I'm going to step over this, or step out. So I already execute everything. You see the run script went back to 0. So I skipped that part. So I'm going to put here 1 again. So now it stops on the next script that I'm going to execute. Step into, step into. So step over. So I'm going 1 by 1 until I get to 10. 10. All right. So I'm here. I'm going to skip this call, which means I will execute it, but I will not debug it. So step over. It skips that. It did execute the script, but it skipped. Now it's going to execute the run script 0. So it's going to reset this guy here. And that's it. So that's how I debugged this specific script here. All right. So all those breakpoints that we put, they are saved in a file that you can have access here. I didn't save the screen yet, or the script yet. So we still cannot exactly see that. All right, so let's take a look on how I could be debugging on my runtime a screen command, because I mentioned that we cannot debug screen commands. So I'm going to open here our recipe screen. And you have this button called load. So if I try here to put breakpoints, I can't. However, this button here calls this script, create file list. So I can go on my main procedures here and put a breakpoint on this guy. So I'm going to put a breakpoint, for example, here is the script that we are calling, file list. So I'm going to put a breakpoint here on the row 69, where we set the files to a specific values, and here on 79 as well. So I'm going to put 2 breakpoints here. Why do I put 2 breakpoints? I can go to a breakpoint. When I hit I'll continue, it's going to stop on the next one. So it's going to execute everything. I'm going to go to the next breakpoint. All right, so let's see how I can debug that. So if I'm going to call the runtime in debug mode, let me just stop here and tell the system that I'm going to actually debug the viewer module now. So, debug. So, when you are debugging the viewer module, we always bring the viewer not having full screen. You're always going to have this frame around it, which is similar to when you're running a a Windows CE application on the PC. You know, we call the C emulator. Why that? So it doesn't hang up your computer. If we open that and we cover everything and you are on a breakpoint, everything's suspended. So you didn't have a way to get out of that. All right? So let's go to some screens. Here we have the recipes screen. And I'm going to click on that specific button that we saw is calling this function here. So I'm going to even close the main procedures. And I'm going to call it and boom, it automatically opens the main procedures and goes to my breakpoint. So now I can roll my mouse over and see some of those variables. And now you are learning some of the limitations that we have. For complex files, we cannot show the exact value. So when you see on locals here, you see some of the variables, but you see FSO is a complex type of variable. We cannot show a value for that here, right? But other files like target file list, this has a value because that parameter was passed on the function call. So here you can already see the parameter that we passed on the function. That's pretty cool because before we need to put a trace message for each one of those parameters. All right, now you can see the value there. So doing this, I suspended the execution. I can see the value, so I can step into. All right, I set files now. Now I'm gonna set file list to a certain value, and for each file inside files, we're gonna try to find inside the string a dot with the extension XML, and then write that to a file list. So I step into here in files, and then number of files right now is 0. So I step into, I check that. File name was default.xml, so we found that. So now we're gonna go write the line to a specific file. Step into. Now I'm gonna increment my variable number of files. There you go, number of files. Now it's 1, and then I go next. So I'm gonna go back up here. So I execute that again, and my total of files is 2. Now, so I'm done with my loop. So I close my list file. So I'm going one by one here. So create file list is the name of the function. The return value is the number of files, 2. So now create files list, which the function name returns 2. That's the end of the function. So we are done. And we're going to continue our execution. Doing that, you see here the screen was open with 2 files. So I choose here default, load. Here I have the values for the tags. Okay, so if I run the debug again, it's going to go and stop on my breakpoint. If I say continue, it's going to execute everything and go to my next breakpoint. And I hit continue again, you're going to keep executing everything. So then I see here. Otherwise, it's going to keep debugging the whole graphics module. Okay, so it calls the graphics script, and you can debug the graphics script, and there you go. All right. So some of the limitations that we may have here. Let me stop. So I'm going to go back on this simple example that I have here, and I'm going to make my X one array. So, and I'm going to make this. Y is actually going to be a index. And what I'm going to do is with the array index y is going to be equals to y. So this is an array now. X is now an array. So what is this icon here? This icon here means that I changed the breaking point position because I added more stuff. So do I want to save? As soon as I save this script, there you go. Then it's gonna actually implement that breaking point. That happens because you can insert breaking points while you are already debugging the code, as I'm going to show here. So I'm going to call now the script in debug mode. I'm going to be debugging only the background tasks now. So I call my debug function here. And I'll go back to my development environment. And I'm going to force my variable run script into 1. Boom. So now I stop here. As you can see, even my tag counter that is on the second script stopped counting. Right? So here I have 0, I have X, I have Y, I have the value 0. But when I look on locals, I don't know the value for my variable X because it's an array now. So if I step into, I can see Y being incremented, but I don't have the value for the X array position. All right? So that's one of the existing limitations that we have on VBScript. We are working always to improve the features that we have, but it's important for you guys to know what can be debugged so far. So if you create a button on the screen, just like we did here, and you want to debug this script that is in here, that at this time doesn't work. But if you do something like this, you call a function from the global procedures, you can debug on the global procedures. Okay? Some other things that are important to remember. We debug locally. The debugger runs locally. So if you put breakpoints on, let's say, VBScript here, and you call these guys on the WebThing client, we don't debug the WebThing client yet, or a remote secure viewer. So if you want to debug your graphic part, you can debug locally. Once you find the problem, then you can deploy it to your WebThing client or your secure viewer. Okay? So, this said, I'm going to go now to the Q&A session. So it's questions and answers session. I'm going to check here if we already have anything on the Q&A panel or on the chat. And you guys feel free to send your questions, and I'm going to answer on the order that they were received. So the first question that I have here would be very interesting for everybody to hear too. Is what are the best practices for debugging projects running on WebThing client while the project is running as a service? That's a great question. Basically, you cannot debug a project that's running as a service. Okay? So if you want to, before you deploy that project as a service, you run as an application, you debug it, so you put the breakpoints and everything, find the problem that you're having. Once you have solved that problem, then you go back into running as a service. And right now, you cannot debug a WebThing client. We cannot, on the WebThing client, put breakpoints and then call, let's say, a remote procedure call to that screen and debug what's happening there. So if you have a project like that running on WebThing client and having the project running as a service on the server, you're going to have to make the server as an application and the WebThing client as a local viewer. Then you can debug what's happening there, find the problem, solve it, and redeploy your project to the WebThing client and run again the server as a service. Okay? So I got another question here. How long do we anticipate that we're going to address the limitations? That's a tricky question because when you work with software, you're constantly evolving your product. So we are constantly evolving in improving everything on the product on InduSoft Web Studio. And the more and more, we're going to improve also our VBScript debugging tools. Here on ServicePack 2, we put the very first version of the debugger. On the patch 1 for ServicePack 2, we already fixed some of the issues that were introduced with this new feature. feature. And for Spec 3, we're going to add more features and we're going to address some of the limitations as well. So that's let's say a process that's ongoing and that's going to keep going forever to improve all the features, including the VBScript. So whenever you have new releases, keep in mind you're going to have improvements also on that area. Okay. Another interesting question here. I mentioned variables and tags, and this customer here is asking what's the difference. That's a very good question. So here's an example. Whenever you are on the VBScript interface and you have a $sign, this is actually a tag. This guy here I'm going to find on the project tags database. And if you look here on my right lower corner, we have the tag count. This is what's going to count towards your license. As you know, InduSoft Web Studio licenses, they are counted by the project size, by the number of tags that you have on your project. So everything that is here, we're going to count towards license. But when I go to a VBScript and I create a variable, like this one here, counter, see, counter long, and then all these guys here, they are variables. We don't count these guys towards the license. If I look on my startup script here, we created those variables on the startup script, counter, counter long, and when I go to the script 1, I'm using these variables counter and counter long, so I did not declare them here, but I can use these variables counter, counter long, or this last one that I show here, the WinDP, on any of my scripts here. So you have one variable that will not count towards the license here that can be used on several scripts, including arrays like this. So if you did a dim and you put a variable name, so you're not using $sign, you're using variables, these guys can be used within the script. So keep in mind this, you can use those within the script. You cannot put a VBScript variable on a screen as an object for an animation, for example. Let's say that you put here on this screen, you put something like that, and you're going to associate this text data link to a tag. You cannot associate that to a variable. You associate that only with one of our tags or the result of a function. Okay? But you can do all the calculations using variables, and at the end assign the variable from your calculations into a tag, and that can be displayed on the screen. That can be go to a driver worksheet, to an OPC worksheet. So the lifetime of a variable is only inside script. Okay, you can use a variable on the other tests like scheduler or VBs or communication drivers, OPC, or screen animations. All right? Thanks for the question. And then I have a question here asking if the VBScript debugger works with our collaboration tool. As you guys may know already, on version 7.1, we added the capability of integrating with Microsoft TFS, Team Foundation System 2010, and or even 2012, and have application lifecycle management or collaboration tool, which means more than one user working on the same projects where you can check out files, check in files. So that's the functionality that we call the collaboration tool. And the question was, will VBScript work with the collaboration? Well, on the collaboration, you're going to be managing your files. So you're going to, let's say, check out them. You're going to then run the project locally, and you're going to debug it. So you're going to put the breakpoints and everything. And then, once you're done, you're going to check back in. So those things are parallel. They will not overlap. So the answer is, will they work with the collaboration? Yes. They don't interfere with each other. So a project that you got from the collaboration, you can debug and then check back into your collaboration server. Okay, I hope that answers your question. Okay, we got a good one here. is there a limitations on the number of breaking points on the project? No, there's no limitation. You can put as many breakpoints as you want. Basically, what's going to happen is, as you put the breakpoints, when you click on the execute, as you saw here, I just clicked and I added one breakpoint on the fly. So I'm running the debug. So let me stop here. So I'm going to start my debug. So I'm here on my debug. I'm going to call my run script here. 1. So I pause here, and I'm going to call and add a breakpoint here, and add a breakpoint here, and remove this one here. So we can do that even on the runtime, and there's no limitation for the number of breaking points that you can put there. Okay? Some other things. If you see here on the debug options, I have debug viewer, debug background test grayed out. Why do I have those? Because I cannot change this parameter while I am either running the project in debug mode or in full runtime mode. I have to stop the project, then I can change those settings. Alright? So if I do a continue here, it's going to go execute this and going to stop on the next breakpoint. There you go. Okay, that's how it works. So I can put here another breakpoint here. I'm going to do a continue. Break. And then I'm going to put this guy in 1 again. So there you go. We stop here, continue. Go to the next breakpoint. I'm going to remove this. So I'm going to keep an eye on the run script. So I can also use keyboard shortcuts for that. So I can use F11, I can use Control F5. So if I use now Control F5, I'm done executing it. All right. So that was a good question. So I got one more question here, asking about the stack frame and the frame tab again. So a good example of this guys here, like right now, is blank because I wasn't executing anything. So now I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna move my tag here into 1. So now I suspended on this break here. So on this break, if I look locals, it's going to show the variables that I have. And if I look on the stack frame, I'm showing which functions are being called, which worksheets are calling that function, or if that was a command from the screen. Okay? So here I have the file that contains that, and that came from the script 002, this breakpoint here. The tasks frame is going to show the status of the tasks that are affected by that debugging. So right now we have the background tasks. Inside the background task we have specifically the script module. That's the one that is currently in user break. Alright, that's the only thing that's running right now. And there you go again. And now I'm suspended where? On the line number 12. Okay, so I'm going to give another example here. If I go and debug again the viewer module now, and go, if I actually debug the viewer module, and then I'm going to go to the recipe screen, click here on the button to load the recipe. So it's going to go and stop here on this main procedure that a button is calling. So we have here the create file list function. That file list function is being called by this button here. Okay, so this is a command on a button on the on-down action from the object with the ID number 0 on the screen here. So that's the information that we are showing on the stack frame. So I stopped where? On the global procedures. on the line number 69. So if I look here on the global procedures, I'm on the line number 69 of the global procedures. And who called this function was the on-down action from the object ID number 1 on the RESP screen inside the viewer module. So you have all the information of who's calling that. That's on the stack frame. On the test frame, you see all the other tasks that are being affected by that pause. So you have the screens, menu left, home, open, header. So you have all these other screens that are no longer executing or even a graphic script while I am on a user break. So if I do a continue now, I go to the next one. So if I look on the stack frame, it's going to show that I'm now paused on the line number 79. I can step into, execute the next one, line 80, line 81, end of the function. So when I'm done executing this, I'm now on the next step on my graphics debugging, on my viewer debugging. So on the graphics script, I'm now debugging the while running script, and it stops on the line number 20, which is, nothing. So I do a step into, and that's executed again. It's going to go to the screen script of each one of the screens to see what has to be executed, or I can do a continue, and I'm going to keep executing everything until I hit break. And then it's going to, stop, and I can keep executing all the screens. So it's going to show that right now I'm on the graphics script. I go step out. Now I'm on the header screen. Right now, I'm on the menu left screen that is open. All the other ones are suspended. Okay? So I just stopped my debug here. Sometimes it will take a little while to stop. So here's a good question. How can I access the debug menu on InduSoft 7? We introduced this feature on version 7.1 SurSpec 2. Okay? So anything earlier than version 7.1 SurSpec 2, we don't have the debug feature yet. Okay? So to access the debug menu, it has to be InduSoft 7.1. It cannot be version 7 only. All right? And you're going to see that this menu here shows and hides depending on which file it's open. So if I open a script, it shows up here. If I open a screen, only if I'm on the screen script of that screen. Because if I only have the screen open, I don't have the debug in here. Okay? Like recipes, I don't have that here. Header. If I choose startup script, then I have the debug. If I choose project tags, I don't have the debug tab. Okay? So it shows if the file supports that. The document that you're editing supports debugging. All right? And again, version 7.1, SurSpec 2, or later. Nothing earlier than that. So this question here, I'm going to reach to everybody. It's a little bit off topic, but maybe for the interest of more people. The question is, how can you relate the object ID to the object on the screen? So as you select one object, we assign an ID to it, and you can see the ID on the very right lower corner here, where you have information like the X and Y positions and the ID number of the object. Okay? And you here on the Format tab, you can change the position of the object, but you cannot change the ID. So each one of these objects here, for instance, this one here is on the front of everything else. And I can navigate to all the objects using the tab key. So 1, 2, 3. So as I use the tab, I navigate through the other objects with the IDs. Okay, every object you put on the screen, we're going to assign an ID to it. If you want to change the ID, you change the position of the object. So right now, the ID is 3. If I send this guy backwards, it's going to go and become 2, and other object became 3. Or if I send to back, it's going to go behind everything else. So now the ID is 0. So it's the object is on the very back. The other ones, 1, 2, and 3, they now increase 1 number. Okay, so that's the object ID, and that's the information that we show here on the stack frame. Depending when you call from an object on the screen, we're going to show what is the ID of the object that called that global procedure. All right? All right, so right now, I don't have any other questions, and we are a little bit over 1 hour. So, if you have additional questions about this topic or anything related to InduSoft, InduSoft Web Studio, our product, the features of our product and our company, here is our contact information. This webinar was recorded, and you're going to be able to access it in our website, www.indosoft.com. You're going to see the link with support, and then you're going to have our video library there. And we have instructional videos. We have our whole training module there recorded. And we have also all the webinars that we did. We do webinars every 2 weeks, and this is the VBScript. This is a very interesting one. So just, you can watch it again as many times as you want, or you can call us. Here are the numbers from each one of our offices, US, Brazil, and Germany. Our office in Germany attends the whole Europe, and they speak English there as well. You can call it. And here in the US, we have the 877 toll-free number, 877 InduSoft, or 463-8763. So with that, I thank each one of you for staying here on this webinar, for attending it, and you're going to receive a brief survey that if you fill it and let us know how we did and other stuff that may be interesting for you that we can create a webinar for, you're going to receive one of our webinar series t-shirts as a token of appreciation. All right, so I wish you guys a great rest of day, a great rest of week, and I'm going to see you again on the next webinar. Thank you. Take care.